Howdy y'all, welcome back to the Southern Appalachian Anglers YouTube channel. My name is Ethan Hallfield, I'm head guide. In today's video I'm going to show y'all predominant rod types that we fish with here in the Southern Appalachians. I'll give a breakdown in terms of like why I would use one over the other. A lot of it depends on where you're fishing, the size of the fish, things of that nature. But I've got 3 rods laid out here, and I'm going to start out with the one that everyone is probably most familiar with at this point, and that's a 9-foot 5-weight fast action fly rod. Generally when you get like one of those combo kits, let's say it's like a TFO NXT or maybe a combo kit from Reddington, something along those lines, they're generally going to be somewhere around the 5-weight range. And a 5-weight rod's a good middle-of-the-road rod. So for those of you who might not know the differences between like weights of rods, it's kind of like comparing like the actions to conventional gear. So like ultralight, medium heavy, heavy power, things of that nature. But the weight describes what type of fly line you can throw on these rods, and that also is categorized on how heavy the rod is. So fly rods generally range from a 0 to a 1 weight, which is like ultra light, all the way up to a 12, even in some cases a 14 weight, and that would be like your offshore billfish, sailfish rods. For trout, if you're predominantly fishing with small streamers, dry flies, and nymphs, your 3 to 5 weight range is kind of where you want to stay at. And most people start out with a 5 weight, and a fast action 5-weight at that, because it's a very versatile rod. It's kind of in the middle of the road and you can do a lot of different things with it. Now when I say fast action, what I'm referring to is the action of the rod itself and in terms of like how that tip bends. So if I take my line and I bend the rod back just a little bit, I got a lot of resistance there at the tip. Basically the way we describe these rods is almost like broomsticks. They're very stiff, but what that enables you to do, enables you to throw flies that are more heavily weighted, or maybe like a nymphing system that's more heavily weighted. So what I predominantly use a 9-foot 5-weight for, if I don't drop my rod on the floor there, is predominantly nymph rigs and small streamers. They're great at turning over heavily weighted nymph rigs, especially if I run into a situation where I've got really high water and you throw a lot of weight on. 9-foot 5-weight is fantastic for that. Also, having a longer rod, like a 9-foot rod, enables you to reach for places without having to mend or put yourself in a situation where you have to do some sort of sketchy weighting to get the fish. It's good for throwing small streamers too, anywhere from like a size 4 to a 6 all the way down to a 10. Great rod for that. Where a 9-foot 5-weight doesn't shine though is throwing really delicate stuff. So let's say you get onto the water and you got low water, the fish are being really spooky, you have to kind of downsize your flies and your tippet size. Generally with a 9-foot 5-weight, you want to stay, as far as nymphing is concerned, that 4 to 5x range, and you want your hooks to be a little bit more stout as well, because one thing people don't think about when it comes to their fly selection is the hook that it's tied on. So if you look at your fly and the hook is a light wire hook, you don't necessarily want to throw it on 9-foot 5-weight, because where that rod is really stiff, you don't have a lot of bend in the tip right there, you get less shock absorbance. So if you hook a big fish on a live wire hook, it takes off running. If you don't have that shock absorbance on the tip, odds are that hook's going to bend out or break, which I've seen happen more than once. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about fly selection with your fly rod. But again, 9-foot 5-weight, great for nymphing, great for starting out with because it turns flies over very easily, and it's also good for throwing small streamers. Now, this middle rod that I've got here is a 9-foot 4-weight fast action rod. And if I had to pick one rod to fish on almost any scenario you're going to run into in the Southern Appalachians, 9-foot 4-weight's the one to get. Fast action, a little bit more moderate action, either one applies in this situation. With a fast action 4-weight, I get the benefits of a 5-weight because it's a little bit stiffer rod. You can throw a nymph rig on it. You can still throw small streamers on this if your casting abilities are good enough, but it also enables you to throw lighter line. So you can go all the way down to 6 or 7x tippet on a rod like this. You can throw dry dropper rigs. It's good for catching, you know, your average size wild trout, which is going to be around anywhere from 6 to 10 inches depending on the stream that you're in, and having that little extra length allows you to again reach for your target instead of having to mend or try to wade out further into the river. You can also fish on smaller streams with this, and again it's good for protecting that light line and lighter wire hooks that you would normally find on like a dry fly, for example. And this rod, while I'm thinking about it too, since I got one tied on here, is also good for throwing terrestrials in the summertime. So I got a big size 8 hopper on there, it's got a little bit beefier hook. Got it tied on to 5x tippet right here. This rod will handle it just fine. If it's a little bit stiffer, it's good at throwing wind-resistant dry flies like that, no problem. Now, most of the wild trout streams we have in the Southern Appalachians are going to be anywhere from, you know, all the way to small creeks, so you could literally jump across anywhere up to 10 feet in length. So what that translates into is you're predominantly fishing really small streams. You want to kind of keep to that 2 to 3 weight range. And you can also shorten the length of your rod as well. So this is an 8'6" 3-weight right here. And it's a little bit more of a moderate action in terms of the tip. So if I move this over here, and hopefully we'll pick it up in the frame, if I take my rod tip and I bend it back like this with the line, you can see how it bends a little bit more coming down the tip. So you get a little bit more shock absorbance, helps to protect that lighter line, and it's also good for fighting smaller fish. One of the reasons why I advocate for using a lighter line and, well, lighter rod on smaller fish, it's mainly a conservation aspect to it as well, because we don't want to do anything to hurt the fish. If you're fishing it with a 9'5" weight on really small trout water, what's going to happen when you set the hook into that fish, you're going to send it flying into the next county over. You're going to bang it up on rocks. I've even seen instances where people have thrown fish up into trees. Last thing you want to do is do that to the fish, because that's the future of our sport. So we want to try to take care of our fish, and having an appropriate rod is the best way to do that. Again, that's where this 8'3" weight, 8'6" 3-weight comes into play. Also, that shorter length, you know, if you're in somewhere that's really tied up in the backcountry or crawling through laurel bushes, things of that nature, having a shorter rod in and of itself is going to help you kind of maneuver through that stuff and not get tangled up as much. But again, this is just a really general overview of the types of rods that I fish with most of the time. Take this information and run with it. You can, I mean, if you had to pick really 3 fly rods or even 2 fly rods, a 4 or 5-weight would probably be the ones to pick. But I hope this helps you out, and if you have any more questions, please feel free to comment down below or shoot us an email or a message at SouthernAppalachianAnglers.com. Appreciate y'all watching, and tight lines.